The receipt is shaking in my hand. At first I think it's the cold. Paris has this way of entering your bones, even when you're used to it, even after all these years. But I know the truth. It's not the weather. It's what this piece of paper represents. 10 years of my life are printed here. Dates, numbers, stamps, proof that everything I worked for is finally done. The house is paid, fully. I should feel proud, relieved, victorious. That's what success is supposed to feel like. But as I stand here, under the grey Parisian sky, surrounded by people rushing past me without noticing, something feels painfully wrong. I survived, and yet it feels like I lost something I can't name. I look around. Umbrellas bump into each other. Shoes splash through shallow puddles. Someone laughs nearby, loud and careless. Life continues, completely unaware that my world has just stopped. I built a house I may never live in. I sent money to a family that barely knows my voice anymore, and the cost of that success was far greater than anything I ever imagined when I left. I fold the receipt carefully and slide it into my jacket pocket, as if handling something fragile. My hands are older now, rougher, marked by years of work that no one ever photographed. For a long time, I just stand there, thinking, remembering. I tell myself I should call home, that this is the moment I've been waiting for, the moment everything finally makes sense. But my phone feels heavier than it should, because deep down, I already know that some victories arrive too late. As I walk, my reflection appears in the dark glass of shop windows. I barely recognize the man staring back at me. He looks tired, hollow, like someone shaped more by obligation than by choice. I ask myself a question that refuses to leave. At what point did survival become my entire identity? At what moment did providing replace being present? The rain begins to fall harder now, streaking the city in silver lines. Paris has always been beautiful from a distance. From the inside, it teaches you how to disappear. I remember when I first arrived here. I remember believing that effort would be enough, that sacrifice had an expiration date. That distance was temporary. I was wrong, because distance doesn't always break things loudly. Sometimes it erodes them quietly, year after year, until one day you realize there is nothing left to return to. I stop walking. The sound of the city fades into a dull hum behind me, and suddenly, a memory pushes its way forward. Warm, bright, and impossibly alive. A place where the air was heavy with heat instead of cold. A place where my name was spoken with familiarity, not paperwork. A place where I was not invisible, before Paris, before the silence, before I became just a provider. Let me take you back to who I was, before I believed leaving was the only way to stay. Chapter 1. Before Paris, my life had weight in different ways. Not the kind that bends your back or steals your breath, but the kind that keeps your feet grounded. The kind that tells you who you are, even when you have very little. I was born in Senegal, in a small village where the days began before the sun and ended long after it disappeared. The heat was constant, pressing against your skin like a second body. Dust followed you everywhere, settling on your clothes, your hands, your thoughts, but it never felt heavy. It felt familiar. In the mornings, I woke up to voices, not alarms. Women greeting each other as they passed by, children laughing without reason, the distant sound of metal striking metal as someone started work early. The air carried the smell of firewood, strong coffee, roasted peanuts. Life did not whisper there. It announced itself. Our home was simple, cracked walls, a roof that complained loudly when the rain came. But inside, everything had a place, not because we owned much, but because we shared everything. At night, we sat outside, the ground still warm beneath us. Stories moved from one person to another like a shared memory, even when they belonged to no one in particular. Laughter came easily. Silence was never empty. That was home. Not the structure, the presence. I remember the day my son was born. They placed him in my arms, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the weight of his body against my chest. He was so small, yet his fingers wrapped around my thumb with certainty, like he already knew he belonged there. I had never felt stronger. Aminata sat beside me. exhausted and glowing in that quiet way only new mothers do. When she smiled at me, it felt like a promise I didn't yet understand. We had almost nothing then, no savings, no safety net, no clear future. But I had work, I had skill, I had a family that looked at me as if I was enough, and that mattered. Still, there was pressure. You feel it early, even if you don't name it. The quiet expectation that a man must become more than what his village allows him to be. That staying means stagnation, that leaving is ambition. Everywhere, people talked about the West, France, Paris. They spoke of it like a place where effort turns directly into dignity, where money comes faster, where struggle has a deadline. I listened. At first, I resisted the idea. I told myself we were fine, that happiness didn't need distance, that my son would grow up knowing my face, not my voice through a phone. But doubt has a slow way of settling in. Each time I struggled to pay for something simple, each time I watched Aminata calculate expenses in silence, each time I imagined my son growing older without opportunity, the idea of leaving stopped sounding like abandonment. It started sounding like responsibility. I told myself it would be temporary. 2 years. That number became my shield. 2 years, I said to Aminata one night as we sat outside, the stars sharp and endless above us. I'll work hard. I'll come back. We'll build something better. She listened quietly. She always did. I don't want you to disappear, she said. I won't, I promised. And in that moment, I believed it. The farewell was not dramatic. There were no tears at first. Family gathered. Hands were shaken. Advice was given freely, even when it contradicted itself. Someone joked that I would come back wearing city clothes, speaking with a different accent. I laughed. I walked away with a light step, convinced that distance was something I could manage, something that obeyed intention. I did not yet understand that distance does not ask permission. As the village faded behind me, I carried one clear image in my mind, my son running toward me when I returned, older, stronger, but still reaching for my hand. That image sustained me. It followed me across borders, across waiting rooms, across the long flight that carried me toward a life I believed would expand mine. I did not know then that some journeys begin with love and end with silence, and that Paris, waiting quietly on the other side of the world, would not care who I had been before I arrived.
This is Searching for Home Stories. If these stories matter to you, leave a like and subscribe. We share real human journeys from around the world, stories that help us understand life through the eyes of those searching for home. Now, let's return to our story.
Chapter 2. The sliding doors opened, and the cold hit me before anyone did. It wasn't just the temperature. It was the feeling that I had stepped into a place that did not expect me, and did not intend to make room for me either. Paris smelled different. The air was sharp, metallic. The sky felt lower than it ever had back home, pressing down instead of opening up. I pulled my jacket closer to my body, suddenly aware of how thin it was. I stood there, holding my bag, scanning every face in the crowd. I was waiting for a man I had never met, a man who had promised me work, a room, a beginning. Minutes passed, then more. People reunited, laughed, walked away together. My phone stayed silent. I checked the number again, called, no answer. I told myself not to panic, that delays happen, that this was just the beginning, and beginnings are always messy. But as the hours stretched on, something inside me tightened. By nightfall, the station felt colder, louder, less forgiving. I sat on a wooden bench, my bag between my feet, watching people pass as if I were part of the furniture. This was not how I imagined arrival. In the distance, I saw it for the first time. The Eiffel Tower, glowing softly against the dark sky. Back home, people spoke of it with awe. Here, it felt like a reminder that beauty does not mean belonging. I pulled out my phone again. My mother's picture filled the screen. Her smile was warm, familiar. For a moment, my thumb hovered over the call button. I didn't press it. Calling would mean explaining. Explaining would mean admitting that I had arrived with nothing but hope. and that hope was already cracking. I stood up and walked. I don't remember where I went that first night, only that my legs kept moving while my thoughts stayed behind. Streets blurred together, lights reflected on wet pavement. The city felt endless, and I felt incredibly small inside it. When I finally found a place to sit again, exhaustion took over. My bag became my pillow. The cold crept in slowly without asking. That was my first night in Paris. No welcome, no work, no certainty, only silence. The next days followed the same pattern. I went where I was told opportunity lived. Offices, construction sites, places where resumes were accepted politely and forgotten immediately. My diplomas were glanced at, then pushed aside. Not recognized, they said. Not what we need. I learned quickly that education does not travel well across borders. By the end of the first week, I understood something I hadn't expected. Paris was not cruel. It was indifferent, and indifference cuts deeper than rejection. Eventually, I found work, not the kind I trained for, not the kind I imagined, but work. It started early in the morning and ended when my body stopped responding. Carrying, lifting, holding things together that were never meant to last. I learned to say yes before questions were asked. I learned that silence was safety. At night, I cleaned. Floors that shined under lights I would never enjoy. Offices that belonged to people whose names I would never know. I moved through those spaces like a shadow, careful not to leave a trace. This is when I began to understand the rules. In Paris, survival does not reward presence. It rewards invisibility. The more invisible I became, the safer I was. I stopped speaking unless spoken to. I stopped asking questions. I stopped correcting people when they mispronounced my name. I sent my first money transfer home after only a few weeks. Not because I had much, but because I needed proof. Proof that this was worth it. Proof that leaving had meaning. On the phone, I smiled into my voice. "It's good here," I said. "Work is steady." I did not mention the cold, the hunger, the loneliness that followed me even in crowded rooms. Back home, life continued without me. My son learned to sit, to stand, to walk. I heard it all through a phone line that crackled and cut in and out. Each call felt shorter than the last. Each goodbye lingered longer. At night, I lay awake, staring at ceilings that were never meant to be permanent. I counted days, weeks, months, 2 years, I reminded myself. This is temporary. But time, once it starts moving, does not wait for promises. Little by little, I felt myself changing. Not in ways I could explain, but in ways I could feel. My laughter came slower. My thoughts grew heavier. The man who left home believing effort was enough began to understand that effort has limits. Paris was teaching me something I had never learned before, that survival can keep you alive while quietly erasing who you are. And still, every morning, I woke up and went back, because going back without success felt impossible, because turning around meant facing the possibility that leaving had been a mistake, and I wasn't ready to carry that weight yet. Chapter 3. At first, I thought loneliness was the hardest part. I was wrong. Loneliness, at least, is quiet. What came next was heavier. As the months passed, I began to meet others like me. Men from different countries, different languages, but the same tired eyes. We recognized each other without introductions. The way we walked quickly, the way we kept our heads down, the way we measured every word before speaking. We met at construction sites, in overcrowded rooms, outside late-night cafes that stayed open for people who had nowhere else to go. Sometimes we shared food, sometimes stories, sometimes just silence. There was comfort in that. For the first time since arriving, I wasn't completely invisible. They talked about home the way you talk about something fragile, carefully, as if naming it too often might make it disappear. Everyone had left someone behind. A wife, a child, a mother. Everyone was working toward a promise that felt both close and impossibly far. But not all conversations stayed hopeful. Some spoke about shortcuts, ways to earn faster, ways to avoid certain rules, things done quietly. In the shadows, where questions were dangerous and consequences uncertain, they said it casually, like it was normal, like survival justified everything. Just for a while, they said. Everyone does it. It's the only way. I listened more than I spoke. I understood the temptation. I really did. When you are tired, hungry, and far from home, the line between right and wrong doesn't disappear, it just starts to blur. But something inside me tightened every time those conversations went too far. I thought about my son, about the voice he would hear one day when he asked who I had been during those years. I thought about Aminata, trusting me from far away, believing that distance had not changed my values. I knew that if I crossed certain lines, even once, I wouldn't recognize myself anymore, so I stepped back. At first, it was subtle. I stopped staying late. I stopped answering certain calls. I told myself I was just tired, that I needed rest. But the distance grew. Some looked at me differently after that, like I was naive, like I thought I was better than them. I didn't. I was just afraid that one wrong decision would erase the last pieces of who I still was. So I chose isolation. I worked more. I spoke less. I went straight from one job to the next, avoiding places where conversations drifted toward danger. My world became smaller, more controlled, safer, and lonelier. The days turned into a routine that left no room for questions. Wake up before sunrise, work until my body protested, clean at night, sleep in spaces that felt temporary even after years. I ate alone, walked alone, thought alone. Sometimes weeks passed without real conversation, and slowly I realized something unsettling. Isolation has a way of feeling like discipline at first, like strength, like moral clarity. But over time, it becomes something else. It becomes silence. A silence so deep that even your own thoughts start to echo back at you differently. On the phone, I kept up the performance. "They're good people here," I told Aminata. "I'm focused, just working." I didn't tell her that I avoided people because I was afraid of what desperation could turn me into. I didn't tell her that sometimes the hardest part wasn't temptation. It was watching others give up on themselves and knowing how close you are to doing the same. At night, lying on a narrow bed, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself questions I never said out loud. How much isolation is too much? How much distance can a man carry before he becomes empty? I had come to Paris to build a future. Instead, I was learning how to disappear quietly, not just from the city, but from human connection itself. Still, I told myself this was temporary. Everything was temporary. That belief became my anchor, even as it pulled me deeper into myself. Because in a place where one wrong step could destroy everything, I chose the only thing I felt I could still control: distance, from danger, from people, from anything that might cost me the little stability I had managed to build. I didn't realize then that by protecting my future, I was slowly erasing my present, and that kind of loss doesn't make noise when it happens. It just leaves you alone with yourself for a very long time. Chapter 4. There is a moment when the body stops asking and starts demanding. I didn't notice it at first. Pain had become normal. Fatigue was just part of the routine. In Paris, everyone I knew was tired, so I told myself I was no different, that this was the price of moving forward, but the signs kept coming. My chest burned when I breathed too deeply. A dry cough followed me everywhere, especially at night. Some mornings, I sat on the edge of the bed longer than usual, waiting for my strength to arrive. Sometimes it didn't. Still, I went. I always went. Missing a day felt dangerous. Not just financially, but emotionally. Work was the one thing that justified everything else. As long as I was working, the sacrifice made sense. So I ignored my body. I ignored the dizziness on scaffolding, the trembling in my hands when I lifted heavy loads, the way my reflection looked thinner each time I passed a window. One night, after cleaning offices long past midnight, I stood outside a pharmacy. The green cross glowed softly in the rain, almost inviting. I stepped closer, looked at the prices through the glass. 2 hours of work, that's what the medicine cost? I turned away. Spending money on myself felt like betrayal. Every euro had a destination, and it wasn't me. That night, wrapped in a thin blanket, my body shook, not violently, quietly, like it didn't want to draw attention to itself. The room felt smaller than usual, the silence heavier. That's when the loneliness changed. Before, it had been a background noise, something I could ignore if I stayed busy enough. Now it spoke. It whispered doubts I had no energy to push away. What if this never ends? What if this is all there is now? What if going back no longer fixes anything? I stopped sleeping well. Dreams came in fragments, faces without voices, places without warmth. I woke up tired even after long hours in bed. And then came the calls. At first, they were frequent, then regular, then scheduled. Life back home was moving forward without waiting for me. My son's voice was deeper, his words more confident. Sometimes, he spoke to someone else in the room before answering me. I told myself it was normal, that children grow, but each call left me with a quiet ache I couldn't name. Aminata asked fewer questions. She updated me on logistics instead. School fees, repairs, expenses. Our conversations became efficient, productive, safe. We avoided topics that carried weight, feelings, absence, time. I told myself that was maturity, but some nights, after hanging up, I sat in silence, staring at the wall, realizing that I no longer knew how to speak as a husband, only as a provider. When the residency permit finally arrived, it felt like a victory everyone else could see, but I couldn't fully feel. A small plastic card, a promise of stability. With it came better work, more hours, more money. I sent gifts home, expensive ones, proof that the sacrifice had meaning, tablets, clothes, shoes my children would outgrow before I returned. During video calls, their faces were lit by screens, distracted, busy. I spoke, they listened politely, then looked away. That was the moment something shifted inside me, not sharply, not painfully, just quietly. I realized I was no longer part of their daily lives. I existed in updates, in transfers, in reminders. I had become a system, reliable, consistent, distant. That understanding didn't break me immediately, it settled, and once it did, everything felt heavier, even success. Then came the call on the rainy platform. My father was gone. The words didn't make sense at first. I heard them, but they didn't land. People walked past me, umbrellas brushing my shoulders, as if nothing had changed. Instinct screamed to go home, to be there, to sit with my family, to grieve together. But reality answered faster. Flights, lost wages, rent. I boarded the train instead. Tears came quietly, without permission. I didn't wipe them away. I didn't have the strength. I called Aminata. "We will organize the prayer," she said gently. "Send the money tomorrow. No comfort, no shared silence, only logistics." That night, lying awake, I stared at the ceiling and understood something I had avoided for years. Being strong does not mean being untouched, and survival, when it stretches too long, begins to feel like a slow disappearance. I had given everything to protect the future, but somewhere along the way, I had misplaced the present, and I didn't know if there was still a way back. Chapter 5. The message from the bank arrived early that morning, the final transfer. I stared at the screen longer than I expected. Numbers again. Confirmation. Proof that what I had spent years building was finally complete. The house in Senegal was done, painted, gated, paid in full. Everything I promised had been delivered. I walked through Paris with a strange calm that day. Not happiness, not relief, just stillness, as if my body didn't know what emotion belonged to that moment. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that the waiting was over, that I could finally go home. I called Aminata. "I'm coming back," I said. My voice sounded unfamiliar to my own ears. "We can finally live together again." There was silence on the other end. Not the kind caused by bad signal, the other kind, the one that prepares you for truth. "You've been gone a long time," she said carefully. I didn't interrupt her. I already felt it coming. She told me that life did not stop while I was away, that the children grew, that routines changed, that loneliness doesn't only belong to the one who leaves, it also belongs to the ones who stay. She met someone, not suddenly, not out of betrayal, slowly, someone who was there, someone who helped when things broke, who showed up at school meetings, who carried our daughter when she fell. I closed my eyes. I listened. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't defensive. She spoke with sadness and honesty. "I waited," she said, "for a long time." I understood what she didn't say. Waiting also has limits. Our daughter still calls me Papa. She knows my voice. She knows my name. But her life happens without me. My son belongs to another rhythm now, another man's presence, another daily example of what a father looks like. Aminata told me that I could still help, that my support mattered, that my place, even from far away, had not disappeared completely, but it had changed. When the call ended, I sat down on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall. I didn't cry right away. I felt empty first. Then the weight came. Not anger, not resentment, just the quiet understanding that some sacrifices arrive at their destination too late. I had built a house, but I had missed a childhood. I had protected the future, but lost the present. I still send money every month, for my daughter, for her school, for her needs. I do it willingly, lovingly, but now I do it knowing exactly what that money cannot buy. It cannot replace presence. It cannot rebuild time. It cannot sit beside her when she's afraid at night. Back in my attic one evening, I lifted the mattress and found an envelope, a plane ticket, expired. I held it in my hands for a long time, not as regret, but as acceptance. I walk along the Seine now, often, watching the water move forward without hesitation. It doesn't look back. It doesn't wait. In shop windows, I see a man shaped by distance, duty, and silence. A man who did what he believed was right and learned, too late, that survival and life are not always the same thing. If there is one truth my journey leaves behind, it is this: providing is not the same as being present. Sacrifice without limits becomes loss. And sometimes, the most important things we are trying to build are the very things we slowly walk away from. Some people spend their entire lives searching for home, only to realize, in the end, that home was never a place they could send money to, but a presence they were meant to remain.
If this story moved you in any way, subscribe to Searching for Home Stories, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every story matters, and every voice searching for home matters too.